My name is Jen Freeberg. I'm an assistant professor at Illinois State University, and I teach in the Department of Communication Sciences and Disorders. Previously, I was a speech-language pathologist in District 150 for about 10 years. And really, what that means to you guys is that I am an expert on language development, morphology, mean length of utterance. So this video is intended to help you guys out in understanding those concepts just a little bit. I'm assuming that you're all familiar with morphology being one of 5 main areas of language. Morphology is the study of the smallest units of meaning. And really, within that, to get at what the smallest unit of meaning is, we have things called morphemes. And identifying a morpheme allows us to count the smallest units of meanings in the things that kids say. Every time a child talks, we call it an utterance. And by measuring the length of an utterance, we can look at the morphological complexity of what kids have to tell us. So from a speech-language pathologist perspective, it can give us a lot of information about a child's overall language development, which is really why we study it. When we talk about mean length of utterance, it's simply what it sounds like. It's the average length of a child's utterances measured in morphemes. And we're going to talk about MLU, but before we get there, I just want to give you some explanation about how we got to the point where we knew that MLU was something important to study. There was a researcher in the 1950s named Roger Brown, and he studied morphology, and he wanted to know why kids developed grammar in predictable ways. He wasn't sure how that worked. And as part of his research, he looked at a set of 14 particular morphemes and studied 3 children named Adam, Eve, and Sarah over the period of about 4 years to see how old they were when they developed these different morphemes, and did it happen in the same way in the same amount of time, etc. What he found was that while kids developed their morphemes at a different rate, which is consistent with other areas of development across a child's lifetime, they did develop their grammatical morphemes in the same sequence. And so what he told us is that there was a certain predictability in how kids develop their morphological skills that we could predict and measure over time. Other people have replicated his work with much larger numbers of children. So we know that his findings were good. And what that tells us is that there's a lot we can tell about looking at a child's morphology. We know that morphemes and morphological development will progress along a very predictable continuum in children. And so being able to gauge where a child is at with their morphological development is really very important to tell us how they're doing along the way of developing typical or atypical language. Okay, so when you calculate MLU, there's a couple of things that you should know. First of all, MLU is always calculated around something called a language sample. A language sample is a collection of a child's utterances, usually 50 to 100 different utterances. And to calculate MLU, a teacher or a speech-language pathologist would count the number of morphemes in every single child utterance. And then they'd add up all those morphemes and divide by the total number of utterances. And what you'd get would be a ratio that would be the MLU, mean length of utterance. And that number is indicative to us of how a child is doing with their language development. For you guys as future teachers, you don't have to get as caught up in the intricacies of MLU as we do as speech pathologists. What you need to know is that a child's MLU is roughly equivalent to their age, from the time they're 1.5 years until about the time they're 5 or 6 years of age. So a 3-year-old, we'd expect to have a 3.0 MLU, meaning that most of their utterances are about 3 morphemes long. A 4-year-old would have a 4.0 MLU. A 5.5-year-old would have a 5.5 MLU. So that correspondence between age and MLU is fairly consistent for kids for a pretty long time. Okay, when you look at a child's utterances, you're looking for morphemes. And remember that morphemes are the very smallest units of meaning. And so as you're looking at words, you want to make sure when you count morphemes that you have reduced a word down to its smallest meaningful unit. For instance, if you have the word boy, you can't separate that at all and have it still be meaningful. You can't have a b and you can't have an oi. So boy altogether counts as one morpheme. If, though, you had the word boys, you'd have to count that as two morphemes. Boy is its own morpheme, but so is that S at the end. It is not meaningful by itself, but when it's combined with the word boy, it is meaningful. It tells us more information. It tells us that there's more than one boy. It's a plural S. So boys is two morphemes, boy and plural S. They each get counted as a morpheme. Same with the word walking. Walk is one morpheme, ing is one morpheme. It tells us that it's happening right now. It's not something that gives us a vocabulary kind of meaning, but it tells us tense, it tells us time. It has a lot of meaning built into it. Anytime one morpheme can be added to another to change meaning, it gets counted. So the word teach is its own morpheme. If you had the word teacher, it's two morphemes, teach and then By adding the ER ending on the end of teacher, you're saying it's someone who does this, like with doctor or lawyer or painter, okay? That ER ending is meaningful. Morphemes can be added to the beginnings of words, unlike disable. Those are both two morpheme words. And to give you some practical experience with counting morphemes and calculating MLU, I've given Dr. Bussin a list of 10 examples, which I think she's given to you by this point. What I'd like to do is just work through a couple of them and then give you some time to work through the rest and then show you how I calculate MLU. So if you look at your exemplars, number 1, the boy's sock was white. If we look at this word by word, the is one morpheme. What about boys, though? You have that apostrophe S. Boys. And in this case, the apostrophe S is telling us about possession. So we have to count that as one morpheme. But boy is one morpheme as well. So the word together, boys, is worth two morphemes. Sock, one morpheme. Was, one morpheme. White, one morpheme. So all together in that utterance, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 utterances. So if you would just write a 6 under number of morphemes next to the first example, and then we'll move to the second one. I walked to school. I, one morpheme. Walked, two morphemes. You've got walk and you have your regular past tense ed ending. To and then school. They're both single morpheme words. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 morphemes in example number 2. In number 3, the kids are playing soccer. The is one morpheme. Kids, two morphemes. Kid plus plural S. Are is one morpheme. Playing is two morphemes. Play plus ing. And then soccer for a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 morphemes in number 3. Take a sec and go ahead and complete the rest of those, and we'll come back and talk about the remainder of the examples. Okay, number 4, the teacher is teaching, 6 morphemes. The sky's the limit, 5 morphemes. I dislike broccoli, 4 morphemes. The fireworks the fireworks are loud, 5 morphemes. My dad's truck needs new tires, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 morphemes. The computer is not working today. 7 morphemes. And the last one, number 10, I understand that you're sick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 morphemes. Add those all together for your total number of morphemes. So all those morpheme counts we just did, number 1 to 10, add those together, put them in the box where it says total number of morphemes, divide that number by 10, and that is your MLU. It should be very near 6.0. If I did my math correctly, and I'm not a math person, so you guys will have to check that for me. A couple of things to keep in mind. Compound words are generally counted as one morpheme. If a child says or or we don't always count those. But as a rule, words that can not be broken down anymore, one morpheme, those bound morphemes that are added to words to change the meaning just a little bit, those are one morpheme each too. If you guys have questions about that, Dr. Bussin has my email address. You're welcome to contact me, and good luck with the rest of your semester. Bye-bye.